She was just an old woman riding a broken bicycle and shivering from the biting cold. Her fingers clutched the handlebars as she tried to steady herself, but the icy wind made it nearly impossible. Jack Miller, a humble mechanic from the small town of Brockhaven, spotted her from across the street, tears running down her wrinkled cheeks as she stood beside her fallen bike. Without thinking, Jack wiped his hands on a rag and walked toward her. Before he could even speak, his boss, Ron Dorsey, shouted from the garage door, "She's not a paying customer. Get back to work, Miller." Jack paused, looked back at Ron, then turned to the woman again. Her eyes, filled with pain and quiet shame, met his. "I just needed to get to the pharmacy," she whispered. "My legs aren't what they used to be." "It's okay," Jack said gently. "Let me take care of this." He helped her inside the shop, poured her a cup of coffee, and got to work fixing her bike in the back, despite his boss's disapproval. Moments later, Ron stormed in, red-faced and furious. "You're wasting time on someone who won't even pay," he barked. Jack didn't argue. "She fell. Her chain broke. She just needed help." "That's not our job," Ron snapped. "You're fired." Silence fell over the garage. Jack stood still, his co-workers watching with wide eyes but saying nothing. The old woman tried to speak, but Jack quietly shook his head. "Thank you," she said softly. "Not just for the coffee, but for your kindness." Jack left with her. No job, no backup plan, but not a shred of regret. The next morning, just as the sun began to rise, Jack was jolted awake by a low rumble outside. He stepped out onto his porch, still in his robe, rubbing sleep from his eyes, only to see 7 black luxury SUVs silently pulling up in front of his modest home. The engines purred like big cats. Their windows were tinted, sleek and mysterious. Neighbors peeked through their curtains. A dog barked. Jack's heart pounded. Then one SUV door opened slowly. A tall man in a sharp black suit stepped out, polished shoes shining like glass. He looked straight at Jack and spoke 6 words that sent a chill down his spine. Before Jack could respond, another door opened, and there she was. The old woman, but no longer frail, no longer overlooked. Her coat was now a tailored, elegant piece. A gold brooch sparkled at her collar. She walked with strength, with confidence. She wasn't just a stranger anymore. She was someone important. "Good morning, Mr. Miller," she said, smiling warmly. "May I come in?" Jack never imagined that fixing an old woman's bicycle would change the course of his life. He was just a small-town mechanic, passionate about his work, with calloused hands and a heart full of unspoken dreams. But everything shifted the day Eleanor Whitmore stepped into his world. She invited him into a sleek, high-tech facility, unlike anything he'd ever seen. Robotic arms assembling futuristic machines, polished floors that reflected a world of possibilities, and design bays humming with innovation. Eleanor welcomed him like an old friend. "Welcome, Jack. You made the right choice." After a tour of the facility, she opened a private door and said simply, "This is your workshop." Jack stepped inside and froze. It was every mechanic's dream come true. State-of-the-art tools, diagnostic systems, space to build and create without limits. He turned to Eleanor, unable to speak. "Talent deserves the right environment," she said with a quiet smile. "You treated a stranger's broken bicycle like it was a priceless engine. That told me everything I needed to know." But Jack still wondered, why him? Why now? Eleanor answered with a promise. "Tomorrow you'll understand everything. You weren't chosen by chance." The next morning, Jack arrived early. The building shimmered in the morning light, and for a moment he questioned whether this was all real or just a dream he hadn't woken up from. Inside, he was greeted by Jessica at the front desk. "Good morning, Mr. Miller. Mrs. Whitmore is expecting you." As they walked down a hallway filled with awards and framed photographs, one old image stopped him in his tracks. A young Eleanor standing beside a familiar man. "You recognize him, don't you?" Jessica asked. Jack nodded slowly. "That's my grandfather, Thomas Miller." Jessica smiled. "He mentored Eleanor when she was a teenager. That photo was taken 42 years ago." Jack was stunned. His grandfather, who raised him after his parents passed away, never spoke of this. He had taught Jack honesty, hard work, and humility, but never mentioned mentoring a future tech visionary. Inside Eleanor's office, sunlight poured through tall windows. She turned to him with a kind smile. "Your grandfather saved my life, Jack, not with money, but with kindness when I had nothing." She told him how, at 16, she was orphaned, broke, and alone. She wandered into a junkyard crying, and his grandfather found her, gave her food, a place to sleep, but more than anything, hope. "He told me I had something special, that if I learned to build, I could change the world." Eleanor opened a cabinet and took out an old red toolbox. "This belonged to him. I kept it all these years. Now it's yours." Jack opened it with trembling hands. Inside were familiar tools: wrenches, screwdrivers, a flashlight engraved with his grandfather's initials. Emotion swelled in his chest. "I never got to thank him," Eleanor said, "but I can thank him through you." Jack looked up and whispered, "You already have." Then she led him deeper into the facility, into a secure underground lab. Behind a thick steel door stood something incredible, a sleek prototype vehicle, glowing softly in blue light, unlike anything Jack had ever seen. "This is Project Horizon," Eleanor explained. "Your grandfather helped draft the original concept, a self-sustaining vehicle powered by clean, eternal energy. We shelved it for decades because the technology didn't exist, but now it does." Jack's heart pounded. "You want me to build it?" Eleanor shook her head, smiling. "I want you to lead it." That moment changed everything. Jack, once just a mechanic in a forgotten town, now stood at the helm of a project that could change the world. He worked tirelessly, pouring his heart into the mission. The obstacles were many, but each challenge reminded him of his grandfather's words: "Be patient, stay honest, and never give up." As weeks passed, word of the project spread. The story of the young mechanic resurrecting a forgotten dream began to make headlines, not just for the groundbreaking technology, but for the story behind it, the kindness, the legacy, and the quiet strength that powered it all. Then came the day of the first test. The lab held its breath as Jack activated the vehicle. It hummed to life with a quiet, powerful energy. It moved smoothly, confidently, as if carrying generations of hope forward. Jack's eyes filled with tears. This wasn't